I was 74 years old when my own son looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, we need to talk about what you're leaving behind, before it's too late." He didn't ask how I was feeling. He didn't ask if the drive had been hard on my knees. He said it the way a man talks about a house that's already half sold. We were sitting at my kitchen table, the same one where I taught him how to balance a checkbook back when numbers still mattered to him. His wife sat beside him, quiet, polite in that practiced way that never quite reaches the eyes. My daughter had taken the empty chair near the window, arms folded, watching me like I might suddenly forget my own name. I remember noticing how calm they all looked. That was the first thing that hurt. Calm like they'd rehearsed this. Calm like the decision had already been made, and I was just the last to hear about it. My son cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table toward me. "It's just planning," he said. "Everyone does it. Power of attorney, the house, savings. Makes things easier, for everyone. For everyone. Not for me." I didn't open the folder right away. I looked at his hands instead. Strong hands. Hands I once held when he crossed the street for the first time. Hands I paid to put through college. Hands that were now asking me to sign my life away while I was still very much alive. My daughter spoke next, soft but sharp. "We just don't want things to get complicated later." That was the moment something shifted in my chest. Not anger. Not shock. Just a slow, sinking understanding. They weren't worried about later. They were worried about control. About money. About who would get what, and how soon. I pushed the folder back across the table without opening it. "I'm not dead," I said. My voice didn't shake, but my hands did, just a little. My son sighed, the way he used to when he was a teenager and thought I was being difficult on purpose. "Dad, no one said you were. But you're not getting any younger." That line stayed with me. Not getting any younger. As if age alone made me negotiable. As if love quietly expired when the numbers on the cake got too high. We sat there in silence after that. No one reached for my hand. No one apologized. And in that quiet, I realized this conversation wasn't about planning for my future. It was about dividing it up. I stood up slowly, feeling every year in my knees, and said the only honest thing I had left. "This conversation is over. For today." They looked surprised. Not angry. Surprised. Like they hadn't considered I might still get to decide something. That night, after they left, I stayed at the table long after the coffee went cold, staring at the empty chairs, finally understanding that the real inheritance they wanted wasn't my house or my savings. It was my silence. The next morning, my son called like nothing had happened. Same cheerful tone he used when he wanted something. "Morning, Dad. You good?" I could hear traffic behind him, the sound of a life already in motion. "I'm fine," I said. That wasn't a lie, not exactly. I was upright. Breathing. Making coffee the way I always had. He didn't ask anything else. Just moved right on. "I talked to a guy at work. He says we really should get the paperwork started sooner rather than later. It protects you." There it was again. Protects you. As if I were a child crossing a busy street. I told him I wasn't interested. He paused, long enough for me to imagine his jaw tightening. "You're being stubborn," he said finally. "We're just trying to help." Help. I looked around my kitchen. The chipped mug I'd had for 20 years. The bills stacked neatly by the phone. Everything paid. Everything in order. No chaos waiting to be rescued. Later that day, my daughter stopped by unannounced. She brought a pie from the grocery store, still in the plastic container. She set it on the counter and said, "We're worried about you." I asked her what exactly worried her. She didn't answer right away. Just glanced toward the hallway, toward my bedroom, like she was mentally cataloging what would fit in boxes. "You forget things sometimes," she said. "Little stuff." I thought about that. I forgot names occasionally. Where I put my glasses. But I remembered every loan I'd given them. Every check I'd written when one of them was short. Funny how those memories stayed sharp. That evening, my sister called. Then a nephew. All casual. All circling the same subject without quite landing on it. Had I thought about downsizing? Did I really need the whole house? Wouldn't it be easier if someone helped manage things? By the time I hung up the phone, I felt tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. It wasn't the conversations themselves. It was the pattern. The coordination. Pieces clicking together. I sat in my living room as the sun went down, the house quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. I realized something then that I hadn't wanted to admit before. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing access. That night, I pulled out the old metal box from the closet. The one with my important papers. Deeds. Statements. The will I'd written years ago and never revisited because I trusted the people named in it. I didn't change anything yet. I just read. Slowly. Carefully. And for the first time, I asked myself a question that felt heavy but necessary. If I weren't their father, would they still be this concerned? I closed the box, turned off the light, and went to bed knowing the answer wasn't going to be easy to live with. A week later, the pressure stopped pretending to be subtle. My son showed up again, this time with papers already printed. He didn't ask to sit. He stood at the counter like a man conducting business, tapping the folder with his finger. "We made some adjustments," he said. "Nothing final. Just options." I asked him who "we" was. He hesitated, just a beat too long. I ran it by a lawyer friend. That landed hard. Not because it was illegal. Because it meant they'd moved past conversation and into strategy without me. I told him I hadn't agreed to any of this. He smiled, strained and patient. "Dad, this isn't about agreement. It's about reality. If something happens, the courts get involved. You don't want strangers deciding things." I wanted to say a lot of things. About trust. About gratitude. About how I was still the same man who raised him. But instead I said, "You already decided I can't decide for myself." He didn't deny it. My daughter backed him up, gently, like she always did. "We're just being practical." Practical. I thought about how practical it was when I co-signed her first apartment lease. When I dipped into my savings so my son could keep his house during a bad year. No meetings. No lawyers. Just help. They stayed an hour. An hour of calm voices and careful words, all pointed in one direction. When they left, the folder stayed behind on the counter like a dare. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying old moments, trying to figure out when I stopped being their father and started being a problem to manage. Somewhere between their promotions and my retirement, the balance shifted. The next morning, I made an appointment of my own. I didn't tell anyone. I drove myself, hands steady on the wheel, to an attorney's office across town. A small place. No marble floors. No fancy suits. Just a woman about my daughter's age who looked me in the eye and asked, "What do you want?" No one had asked me that in a long time. I told her everything. Slowly. Honestly. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said something simple that settled in my bones. "You're allowed to change your mind," she said. "And you're allowed to protect yourself." We didn't sign anything that day. We just talked. About boundaries. About options. About what power actually looks like at my age. I drove home feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. When I walked into the house, I saw the folder still on the counter. I picked it up, didn't open it, and carried it to the trash. I dropped it in whole. No ceremony. My phone rang an hour later. My son, already irritated. "Did you look at the papers?" "Yes," I said, though it wasn't exactly true. "And? I won't be signing anything." Silence. Then his voice hardened. "You're making this difficult." "No," I said quietly. "I'm making it clear." I hung up before he could answer, my heart pounding, knowing this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something none of us had planned for. They didn't take the refusal well. 2 days later, my daughter sent me a long text about responsibility and family unity. She used words like legacy and fairness, like we were dividing up a business instead of talking about a man's life. I didn't reply. I needed to hear voices, not read carefully edited concern. That evening, my son showed up again. This time he didn't knock. He still had a key. He stood in the doorway, looking around my living room like he was seeing it for the first time. "You threw the papers away," he said. "Yes." He laughed, short and humorless. "That was immature." That word did it. Immature. From a man who still owed me money from a loan he never finished paying back. "I'm not doing this," I said, pointing to the hallway. "Not here. Not like this." He stepped closer instead. "You don't get it. If you don't cooperate, things get messy. Taxes. Medical decisions. Probate. You think you're helping yourself, but you're not." There was something new in his voice then. Not concern. Fear. And underneath it, something uglier. Losing control scared him more than losing me. I told him to leave. He didn't right away. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You're being influenced. Someone's putting ideas in your head." That hurt more than anything else he'd said. As if the only way I could disagree was if I were confused or manipulated. "No," I said. "I'm finally listening to myself." He left angry. Slammed the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. I sat down slowly, my legs shaking, and waited for my heart to calm. The next morning, my bank called. They were polite. Careful. Asked if everything was all right. Mentioned an inquiry about my accounts. Someone had called pretending to be helping family, asking questions they shouldn't have been asking. That was when the fear finally arrived. Not panic. Just a cold understanding that this wasn't just pressure anymore. It was intrusion. Lines being crossed because they thought they could. I called the attorney back. We met again that afternoon. This time, we signed things. Clear things. Boundaries in ink. I named who could speak for me and who couldn't. I put protections in place I'd never imagined needing against my own children. When I got home, the house felt different. Same walls. Same furniture. But the illusion was gone. That night, I slept with my phone on the nightstand, volume up. Not because I expected an emergency. Because for the first time, I understood something important. Love doesn't ask for control. And anyone who needs it that badly is already telling you who they really are. After that, they changed tactics. The calls stopped, but the messages didn't. Short ones. Carefully worded. My son sent an article about elder fraud, like a warning disguised as concern. My daughter emailed me a list of assisted living options, all of them expensive, all of them far from my neighborhood, my routines, my friends. They were trying to move me without touching me. I kept living my days the same way. Morning walks. Coffee at the same diner where the waitress knew my order and didn't talk down to me. Grocery shopping on Tuesdays. I made a point of staying visible, staying present, like proof I still existed on my own terms. Then one afternoon, a stranger knocked on my door. She introduced herself as a social worker. Polite smile. Clipboard held tight against her chest. "We received a concern about your well-being," she said. I let her in. She asked questions. How was my memory? Did I manage my finances myself? Did I ever feel confused or unsafe at home? I answered calmly. Honestly. I even offered her coffee. Halfway through, she glanced up and said, "Your children are worried." There it was. Out loud now. When she left, she thanked me for my time and said everything seemed in order. I watched her drive away, hands resting on the steering wheel, and felt something inside me harden. That night, I didn't feel sad. I felt resolved. I gathered every document I had. Bank statements. Medical records. The updated legal papers. I organized them the way I used to organize their school forms when they were young. Clear. Labeled. Impossible to misunderstand. The next time my son called, I answered. "You sent someone to my house," I said. He didn't deny it. "We just wanted to be sure you're okay." "No," I said. "You wanted leverage." He raised his voice then. Accused me of pushing them away. Of choosing lawyers over family. Of being ungrateful. I let him finish. Then I said something I'd never said to him before. "If you do this again, I will stop contact altogether." He went quiet. I could hear him breathing. Processing the fact that I meant it. "You wouldn't," he said. "I already am," I replied. After I hung up, I sat alone in the quiet house. It hurt. Of course it did. No parent imagines setting boundaries like this with their own children. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel cornered. I felt steady. And I knew whatever came next, I wasn't going to give up my voice just to keep the peace. The silence after that lasted almost 2 weeks. No calls. No texts. No surprise visits. It should have felt peaceful, but it didn't. It felt like the quiet you get before a storm you can't see yet. I kept going about my days, but I noticed myself listening harder for sounds outside the house, watching the phone light up even when it didn't ring. Then a letter came in the mail. Handwritten. My daughter's handwriting. Careful. Rounded. The kind she used when she wanted to sound gentle. She wrote about love. About regret. About how families sometimes say the wrong things. She said my son was under a lot of stress. She said they were scared of losing me. "Not losing you, Dad," she wrote. "Losing access to you." She didn't mean it that way. But that's how it landed. At the bottom, she asked if we could meet. Just the two of us. Coffee. Neutral ground. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small cafe halfway between our houses. She hugged me like nothing had happened, held on a second too long. We talked about weather, about her job, about nothing at all. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice. "He's not handling this well," she said. "I know. He thinks you're punishing him." I stirred my coffee slowly. "I'm protecting myself." She sighed. "You don't understand how this looks." That sentence told me everything. This wasn't about how it felt. It was about appearances. About what people might say if I didn't fall in line. She slid a new paper across the table. Not legal this time. Personal. A handwritten agreement. Promises of visits. Of respect. Of shared decisions. All of it dependent on one thing. Access. "I just want things to go back to normal," she said. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw how tired she was. How trapped between loyalty and expectation. And I understood something then. Normal for them meant quiet compliance from me. I don't want normal, I said. I want honest. She didn't argue. She just gathered the paper back, her face tightening. Then I don't know what happens next. Neither did I. But I knew what wouldn't. I stood, paid for my coffee, and kissed her on the cheek. I love you, I said. And I meant it. But love, I was learning, doesn't mean surrender. I walked out of that cafe alone, aware that whatever came next was going to cost me something. And prepared to pay it. The cost came sooner than I expected. A week after the cafe, my son filed paperwork. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just official. A petition questioning my capacity to manage my own affairs. He claimed concern. Claimed confusion. Claimed he was acting in my best interest. I was served at my front door. The deputy was respectful. Almost apologetic. I signed, closed the door, and sat down hard in the nearest chair. My hands shook this time. Not from fear of the process, but from the weight of what it meant. My own child was asking the state to decide if I was still myself. The attorney handled the rest. Evaluations. Records. Letters from my doctor, my bank, people who had known me for decades. It was humiliating in a quiet way. Answering questions about my memory. Proving I could still pay my bills. Still cook my meals. Still understand what was being taken from me. My daughter didn't call. Not once. The hearing was brief. Almost anticlimactic. The judge listened. Read. Asked a few questions directly to me. I answered without rushing, without anger. Just facts. Just truth. When it was over, the petition was denied. Outside the courthouse, my son wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not defeated. Just exposed. This didn't have to happen, he said. You made it happen, I replied. He tried to speak again, but I was already walking away. That night, I sat alone in my living room, the house quiet and unchanged. I felt tired down to the bone. But underneath it, something steadier than I'd felt in years. They had crossed every line they could think of. And I was still standing. I knew then that reconciliation, if it ever came, wouldn't come from pleading or patience. It would come only if they learned to see me as a man again, not a resource, not a problem, not a prize waiting to be claimed. I turned off the lights one by one and went to bed knowing the hardest part was over. Not because they'd stopped. But because I had. After the hearing, I didn't hear from either of them for a long time. Months passed. Seasons changed. The house stayed quiet, but it wasn't the same quiet as before. This one felt chosen. I settled into routines that belonged only to me. Morning radio. Long walks. Lunch with an old friend who never asked questions I didn't want to answer. Then, one afternoon, my daughter called. Her voice was different. Lower. Careful. She didn't start with small talk. Dad, she said, I need to tell you something. I sat down. She told me my son was in trouble. Not legal. Financial. The same risks I'd warned him about years ago had finally caught up. Bad investments. Loans stacked on loans. The house was on the edge. The marriage strained. He thought you'd help, she said quietly. Even after everything. I closed my eyes. I felt sadness then, real sadness. Not satisfaction. Not relief. Just the ache of watching your child fall and knowing you can't catch them without falling too. I'm not calling to ask you to fix it, she added quickly. I just thought you should know. Thank you, I said. And I meant that too. There was a pause. Then she said, he misses you. I let the silence stretch. Does he? Yes. I thought about the courtroom. The papers. The deputy at my door. All the chances that had been used up quietly, without ceremony. I missed the son I had, I said. Not the man who tried to erase me. She didn't argue. We talked a little longer. About nothing important. Before we hung up, she said, "I'm sorry. For my part in it. It wasn't everything. But it was something." That night, I stood in my living room and looked around. The same walls they once measured with their eyes. The same chair where I'd signed my name again and again, always in support of someone else. I understood then that helping now wouldn't heal anything. It would only teach them that pressure still worked. So I did the hardest thing left. I stayed still. And in that stillness, I felt something close to peace. The decision came quietly, the way most real decisions do. I didn't announce it. I didn't explain it to anyone. I just made it. One morning, I drove to the attorney's office again. Same chair. Same calm voice asking if I was sure. I was. We reviewed everything one last time. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I adjusted what needed adjusting. Left doors open where they belonged. Closed the ones that had proven unsafe. When I walked out, the air felt lighter than it had in years. I told my daughter a week later, over the phone. I didn't give details. I didn't justify myself. I said, "I've made my arrangements. I need you to respect them." She was quiet. Then she said, "Okay." That was enough. I didn't call my son. Not to punish him. Not to make a point. I just understood that some conversations only reopen wounds that are finally starting to scar over. Life settled. I fixed the loose step on the back porch myself. Took longer than it used to, but I did it. I planted tomatoes in the spring and gave most of them away. I wrote my name on everything important, slowly, carefully, the way a man does when he wants to be sure he's still here. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the boy my son used to be. The way he'd fall asleep in the car with his mouth open. The way he once said, "I hope I'm like you when I'm old." I hope he still is, in the ways that matter. I don't know what the future holds for him. Or for my daughter. Or for me. But I know this. I didn't lose my family because I said no. I found myself because I finally meant it. And that, at this age, feels like enough.